If this video found you today, don't scroll away just yet. What if the answer you've been searching for wasn't hidden somewhere out in the world, but buried beneath the noise inside your own mind? What if the feeling that you've fallen behind isn't proof that you've failed, but a sign that your story is only beginning? There is one idea often associated with Elon Musk's public journey that keeps resurfacing. The biggest battles are rarely fought against competitors. They're fought against doubt, loneliness, and the quiet voice asking whether the sacrifice is worth it. But what happened next surprised almost everyone, because the greatest turning points in life rarely announce themselves. They arrive disguised as ordinary moments. Maybe this is one of those moments for you. Take a deep breath and listen carefully. For years, millions of people have looked at Elon Musk and seen headlines: rockets, electric cars, artificial intelligence, billion-dollar companies, and impossible ambitions. They see confidence. They see success. They see someone willing to risk everything. But behind every public success is a private reality that very few people ever truly understand. Whether you're building a company, trying to save a relationship, recovering from heartbreak, or simply wondering if your life is moving in the right direction, the emotional challenges often feel surprisingly similar. Fear doesn't care how much money you have. Loneliness doesn't disappear because people know your name. Self-doubt doesn't ask for permission before it arrives. And maybe that's why this message matters. Not because it's about one famous entrepreneur, because it's about something every human being experiences. The truth is far more complicated than most people imagine. When people study high achievers, they often focus on the victories. They analyze strategies, investments, technology, and innovation. Yet they overlook the invisible emotional patterns that shape every decision. Why do some people keep moving after failure, while others stop forever? Why do certain relationships make us stronger, while others quietly drain our confidence? Why do we sometimes chase success, only to discover we're still searching for peace? Those questions have fascinated psychologists for decades, and perhaps they've been following you too. Imagine waking up every morning carrying enormous expectations. Every decision is examined. Every mistake becomes international news. Every achievement creates even higher expectations for tomorrow. Most people assume external pressure is the hardest part. It isn't. The hardest pressure often comes from ourselves. Have you ever noticed how your own mind can become your harshest critic? One small mistake suddenly feels like proof you'll never succeed. One rejection feels permanent. One painful conversation echoes for years. The human brain evolved to remember pain more strongly than comfort. It was designed for survival, not happiness. Understanding that changes everything. Because once you realize your emotions aren't always telling you the truth, you begin seeing your life differently. But what happened next shocked everyone. Many successful people eventually discover that achievement alone doesn't silence insecurity. Instead, it often magnifies it. Every new goal creates another mountain. Every summit reveals another horizon. And somewhere along that endless climb, a dangerous question quietly appears. When will I finally feel enough? Maybe you've asked yourself that. Maybe nobody knows you've asked it. Perhaps you smile at work while feeling exhausted inside. Perhaps your friends think everything is fine. Perhaps you're surrounded by people yet still feel strangely alone. If that's true, you're not unusual. You're human. One lesson often drawn from Elon Musk's public career is an unusual willingness to tolerate failure. Rockets exploded. Projects missed deadlines. Companies faced enormous criticism. Yet he repeatedly spoke about learning, improving, and trying again, rather than treating setbacks as permanent defeat. That mindset isn't limited to entrepreneurs. It applies to relationships, to careers, to healing, to becoming someone stronger than yesterday. Failure doesn't always mean you're moving in the wrong direction. Sometimes it means you're finally moving. Yet one question remained unanswered. If resilience is so powerful, why do so many people give up just before things begin to change? Psychologists have an interesting explanation. Human beings crave certainty. The unknown feels uncomfortable. Our brains would rather accept a painful, familiar situation than risk an uncertain future. That's why unhealthy relationships sometimes last longer than they should. That's why dreams remain unfinished. That's why people settle for lives they secretly know don't reflect who they really are. Fear whispers convincing stories. It's too late. You're too old. You've already missed your chance. They'll never understand you. Nothing will change. But are those facts? Or are they simply stories you've repeated long enough to believe? That question changes everything. Because once you challenge the story, you begin changing your future. Think about the moments that transformed your life. Were they dramatic? Or were they quiet conversations, to lust, unexpected decisions, small acts of courage that nobody else even noticed? Real transformation usually begins long before the world sees it. It starts with a choice, a decision made in silence, a promise made to yourself. No applause, No audience. Just one person deciding that today will not look exactly like yesterday. Perhaps that's why this video found you today. Not by accident, but because somewhere inside you, a part of yourself has grown tired of waiting, tired of comparing, tired of believing you're permanently behind. The truth was far more complicated than anyone expected, because life isn't a race against everyone else. It's a conversation between who you are today and who you're willing to become tomorrow. But before that transformation could begin, something unexpected had to happen first. It wasn't another achievement. It wasn't another breakthrough. It was a realization so simple that most people overlook it every single day. And what that realization revealed changed everything. In the next chapter, we'll uncover why emotional conflict, not success, is often the greatest turning point in a person's life, and why the hardest conversations we avoid may be the very ones that set us free. Every meaningful transformation begins with a moment that almost no one notices. From the outside, life appears to move exactly as it always has. The meetings continue, the goals remain, the responsibilities don't disappear, friends still see the same smile, social media still shows carefully chosen moments, nothing seems different. But beneath the surface, everything has already started to change. The previous chapter explored the quiet battle between fear and possibility. It asked a question that many people spend years avoiding. Are the stories in your mind actually true, or have they simply become familiar? Now another question appears. What happens when you're forced to confront yourself? Not the version everyone applauds, the version that only appears when you're completely alone. That is where the real story begins. One lesson many people draw from Elon Musk's of public journey is that extraordinary ambition often comes with extraordinary pressure. Building companies, solving impossible problems, facing constant criticism, and making decisions under the world's attention demand more than intelligence. They demand emotional endurance. But emotional endurance isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. And strangely enough, it often begins with disappointment. Have you ever spent months chasing something, convinced it would finally make you happy? Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was a promotion. Maybe it was financial freedom. You finally reached it, yet the feeling you expected never fully arrived. For a moment, there was excitement, then silence, then another goal. Why does that happen? Psychologists describe this as adaptation. Human beings naturally adjust to new achievements. What once seemed impossible eventually becomes ordinary. The excitement fades, and the mind immediately begins searching for what's next. That's why so many successful people continue feeling restless, not because success failed them, because they expected success to solve problems that only inner growth can solve. The truth was far more complicated. Imagine standing at the top of a mountain after years of climbing. You expect peace. Instead, you see another mountain waiting in the distance. Life rarely rewards us with permanent comfort. It rewards us with opportunities to become stronger. But what happened next shocked everyone, because the greatest challenge wasn't external. It was emotional. Think about relationships for a moment. Every relationship begins with hope. We imagine being fully understood, fully accepted, fully appreciated. But eventually reality appears. Misunderstandings happen. Expectations collide. Silence replaces conversations. Small disappointments slowly become emotional distance. Most people assume these moments mean something is broken. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they simply reveal truths that were impossible to see before. Here's something fascinating. Strong relationships aren't built because two people avoid conflict. They're built because two people learn how to grow through conflict. That's an important difference. The same principle applies to life itself. Your biggest obstacle isn't always the difficult moment. It's your interpretation of that moment. Ask yourself something. When life disappoints you, do you become bitter? Do you become curious? That single choice quietly shapes your future. One mindset often associated with Elon Musk is first principles thinking, the habit of questioning assumptions instead of accepting them automatically. Imagine applying that idea to your own emotions. Instead of saying, I'm a failure, you ask, what evidence actually supports that belief? Instead of saying, nobody cares about me, you ask, am I confusing temporary loneliness with permanent reality? Instead of saying, it's too late, you ask, who decided that? Suddenly your mind begins working for you, instead of against you. Yet one question remained unanswered. If changing our thoughts is possible, why is it so difficult? Because emotions are convincing storytellers. Fear speaks with confidence. Doubt sounds logical. Anxiety predicts futures that haven't happened. And over time, those voices begin sounding like facts. But they aren't facts. They're interpretations. Learning that distinction changes everything. There comes a moment in nearly every meaningful journey when progress becomes invisible. You're working, learning, healing, trying, yet nothing seems different. This is where most people quit. Not because they're incapable, because they mistake invisible growth for no growth. Consider a seed planted beneath the soil. For weeks nothing appears. Does that mean nothing is happening? Of course not. The strongest part of its growth is hidden underground. Roots are expanding long before leaves appear. Human growth often works exactly the same way. Your confidence develops before anyone notices. Your wisdom deepens before your circumstances change. Your character strengthens long before success becomes visible. The truth was hiding in plain sight. Perhaps you've been growing in ways you haven't recognized. Perhaps the difficult season your ways, trying to escape, has been quietly preparing you for something greater. But what Elon realized, through public successes and setbacks alike, and what many resilient people eventually discover, is that lasting progress isn't built on perfect days. It's built on imperfect days, when you refuse to stop. That realization changes the way you see failure. Failure stops becoming an ending. It becomes information, feedback, direction, a teacher, instead of an enemy. Think back to your own life. Which moments shaped you the most? The easy ones, or the painful ones? Most people already know the answer. Pain has an unusual ability to reveal priorities. Heartbreak teaches honesty. Loss teaches gratitude. Failure teaches humility. Loneliness teaches self-discovery. None of those lessons feel pleasant while they're happening. Yet years later, many people realize they wouldn't trade them. Not because suffering is good, because growth emerged from it. Still, another mystery remained. How do you know whether you're holding on because you're strong, or because you're afraid to let go? That question has changed countless lives. Sometimes courage means staying. Sometimes courage means leaving. Sometimes courage means apologizing. Sometimes courage means walking away. Wisdom lies in recognizing the difference, and that's far harder than it sounds. As the emotional tension continued to build, one final realization slowly came into focus. The answers people spend years searching for rarely arrive all at once. They come one honest decision at a time, one difficult conversation, one act of forgiveness, one promise kept to yourself, one step taken despite uncertainty. But there was still one piece of the puzzle missing. The lesson that connected ambition, relationships, resilience, and purpose into a single idea. And once that final truth became clear, nothing would ever look the same again. Because what comes next isn't about becoming someone else. It's about finally becoming the person you've been capable of being all along. Sometimes the most important chapter of your life begins the moment you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That simple shift sounds small, but it has the power to change everything. So far, we've explored the quiet battle between fear and hope. We've uncovered why success alone cannot guarantee peace, and why emotional resilience often grows in moments when nothing seems to be improving. Yet one question remained unanswered. What separates the people who eventually transform their lives from those who remain trapped in the same cycle year after year? The answer isn't luck, it isn't talent, and it certainly isn't perfection. The truth is far more complicated. Many observers of Elon Musk's public career point to one recurring pattern. No matter how large the setback appeared, he repeatedly returned to the same question. What's the next step? Not, why me? Not, what will everyone think? Simply, what can I do now? That mindset doesn't erase pain. It gives pain a direction. Think about your own life. How many nights have you replayed the same conversation in your head? How many times have you imagined a different ending, a different decision, a different relationship, a different version of yourself? The mind loves revisiting the past, because the past feels familiar. But familiar doesn't always mean useful. Every minute spent rewriting yesterday is a minute that cannot build tomorrow. But what happened next shocked everyone. Because letting go isn't something you do once. It's something you choose again and again. Every morning, every difficult conversation, every unexpected setback, every disappointment, you choose whether to carry the weight or learn from it. Psychologists often describe this as emotional flexibility. Instead of resisting every uncomfortable feeling, resilient people learn to experience those emotions without allowing them to define who they are. Fear becomes information. Sadness becomes reflection. Failure becomes education. That doesn't make life easy. It makes growth possible. Imagine standing in front of two doors. Behind one door is certainty. You already know exactly what will happen, because it's the same life you've been living. Behind the other door is uncertainty. You don't know whether you'll succeed. You don't know whether people will support you. You don't even know whether you're ready. Which door would you choose? Most people instinctively reach for certainty, not because it's better, because it's familiar. But every meaningful breakthrough in history required someone willing to open the second or 12. That includes breakthroughs in careers, in relationships, and within ourselves. The truth was hiding there all along. Growth has never been about eliminating uncertainty. It's about becoming strong enough to walk through it. Have you noticed how the strongest people you've ever met usually don't have the easiest stories? They've experienced rejection, loss, disappointment, moments when giving up would have been completely understandable. Yet somehow, they kept moving. Why? Because somewhere along the way, they stopped measuring life only by outcomes. They began measuring it by character. Character grows quietly, no headlines announce it, no audience applauds it, no algorithm rewards it, but it changes everything. One of the most overlooked lessons from ambitious people is that discipline often matters more than motivation. Motivation is emotional. It rises and falls. Discipline is a decision. It continues even when emotions disappear. Think about relationships. How often do people expect love to feel effortless forever? Real relationships don't survive because emotions never change. They survive because two people repeatedly choose honesty, patience, respect, and growth, especially during difficult seasons. The same principle applies to the relationship you have with yourself. Do you speak to yourself with encouragement or constant criticism? Would you treat someone you love the way you treat yourself after making a mistake? If the answer is no, why should you accept it from yourself? That question deserves more attention than most people give it, because your inner voice quietly becomes the soundtrack of your life. If that voice constantly repeats, "I'm not enough," eventually you'll believe it. If that voice begins saying, "I'm still learning," your entire future starts changing. The words remain invisible. Their consequences do not. But another mystery remained. Why do painful experiences sometimes make one person stronger, while leaving another feeling permanently broken? Researchers have explored this question for years. One conclusion appears again and again, meaning people who find meaning in adversity often recover more effectively than people who see suffering as meaningless. That doesn't mean pain is good. It means purpose changes how pain is carried. Imagine lifting a heavy stone for no reason. Now imagine lifting that same stone to rescue someone you love. The weight hasn't changed. The meaning has. Life works the same way. Purpose doesn't always remove difficulty. It transforms your willingness to endure it. But what Elon realized at that moment changed everything. The future isn't built by waiting until fear disappears. It's built by acting while fear is still present. Courage isn't the absence of uncertainty. It's movement despite uncertainty. Pause for a moment and ask yourself something. What conversation have you been avoiding? What dream have you postponed? What apology have you never spoken? What chapter are you afraid to close? Could the answer you've been searching for be hiding behind the very action you grasmesh into laying? Sometimes the door you're afraid to open leads to the freedom you've been praying for. Sometimes it doesn't. But remaining trapped by fear guarantees only one outcome. Nothing changes. As this journey moved closer to its conclusion, one final realization slowly emerged. The greatest victory isn't becoming someone the world admires. It's becoming someone you respect when nobody else is watching. That kind of peace cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed. It cannot be earned through applause. It grows through integrity, through quiet consistency, through choosing your values even when no one notices. And yet, one final piece of the puzzle still remained, the lesson that brings together ambition, love, resilience, heartbreak, purpose, and the courage to begin again. What Elon-inspired thinking can teach us about building a meaningful life isn't ultimately about fame, wealth, or achievement. It's about learning to think differently when life tests you. Because in the final chapter, everything comes together. The unanswered questions, with the hidden lessons, the emotional journey, and the one truth that has the power to change the way you see yourself from this day forward. What happens next may become the most important message you've heard all year. If you've stayed until this moment, there's a reason. Not because every question has been answered, but because you've been willing to ask the